My name is Shane Morris, and my pronouns are him. I I work for in retail for Loblaws companies. I have been a member of Local 1006A for over 40 years now. I'm a union steward, and I also sit on our executive board, and I'm proud to be a member of the union. I also sit on our UFC Canada Indigenous committee. I'm joining you from Dish from One Spoon territory, the Mississaugas of the Credits, and many other First Nations communities here in the Greater Toronto area. My family is from the East Coast, and I'm Micmac and Black Canadian. I really did not know much about my Indigenous past. I grew up in Toronto, where my mother came here at a young age, and because of the turmoil of what happened in my family, we didn't talk much about the Indigenous part. I grew up in the Black community in Toronto, but most importantly, my mother grew up in the Black community in Nova Scotia. We knew about our heritage because we lived around the reserves and the communities, and we knew a lot about our grandmother. And also on the other side of my family, the same thing happened. My grandmother came from the Indigenous communities. Now, in Nova Scotia, where we grew up, my mother left, which was not really a reserve back then, because before 1945, it was more Indigenous land. But she grew up in that, and she moved off those lands. But we didn't talk much about it because of the turmoil and some of the things that happened in our families. We spoke about it among certain peoples, but overall, because of just a lot of things that were happening with residential schools and the 60 scoop, we did not talk about that. And for my mother, when she came to Toronto as a young lady, when she left there, Toronto was a refuge, where it was a space where you could be who you wanted to be, but also it wasn't as dangerous as a place for my family. As I grew up and I knew a little bit about it, and I started learning more, and people started talking about it as the times went on, I was curious about more. I knew a little bit, but I didn't know a lot. What the National Indigenous Committee did was allow me to hear other stories similar across Canada, and then it allowed me to look deeper into our heritage and our past, and I found out that it was very similar in terms of how we spoke about things, but also how a lot of things that were not spoken about were for not only safety reasons, but for just they weren't very welcoming in certain spaces at the time. And as I grew up, I kind of understood why my mother was the way she was from coming from that environment. But the greatest thing about the committee was it allowed me to reach out to my Indigenous community again here in Toronto, but back home, and to learn more about my past. And as I started to learn more about who I am and the things that relate to my Indigenous side of the family, I started to embrace that, but also started to learn more about the cultural side as I interacted with different elders and different people in the community. And I started to learn more about the culture and understood why a lot of it was suppressed. And it had everything to do from the school system to the residential system to the colonial system. And it was evident, especially back home in Nova Scotia, where that Black community, which is part of my background and heritage too, was a refuge to our people as in Nova Scotia, a lot of those communities were fragmented and broken apart. But now there's a resilience, and they've put back those communities, and they're thriving. What it means to be Black and Indigenous to me is learning more about my history, but also understanding more about myself and my identity. Growing up, we've always been Canadian. We've never had any other identity in terms of where we came from. We have a history where, on my Black side, some of it came through the Underground Railroad, but the Indigenous side, we always knew in terms of we're always here, and we have a deep history and tradition of being Canadian in terms of we knew that we came from the land, and we went back far enough where we were here so long we didn't know anything but this as a home. But in terms of work, it's allowed me to celebrate certain days and good things and bad things within my culture, in terms of Red Dress Day and Orange Shirt Day, and it's allowed me to work hard and help individuals and communities and organizations. Our National Indigenous Committee has allowed me to come in connection with those people and hear those stories. But also, some of the things that we're working for at work would be to, in some places they have it in our collective agreement, we don't have that many Indigenous workers. We do have some within our workplaces, but some of the things we would want is to get a couple of holidays so that I can go within the community and reach out and honor the past and the legacy that we have. What reconciliation means to me is to move forward as a people, but also to have the truth come out in its fullest form. A lot of it has to be told from our people. A lot of it has been rewritten in a way that sounds good, but it's not really truthful. What I'd like to see within the labor movement and within our workplaces is allow people to ask those questions, where there's not fear of them either feeling shameful from some of the things that happened in the past, but to truly learn what's happened, and we can move forward and we can celebrate together, but also learn from the past and learn from the future. And most importantly, I'd like to see a lot of the communities, the Indigenous communities, and our peoples have a voice where we're not only heard, but we can be integrated into Canadian society in a point where, from our perspective, the things that are important to us are listened to, but also have an understanding why certain things are important. Because when we go back to the past, you learn from the past and it moves you forward in the future. If we can learn some of the things from the past, it'll not only help our communities, it'll help out in workplaces, but it'll help out all Canadians, because the past is a reflection of our future. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to have a little time to speak on this video. Miigwech.